Hello, here we're going to demo creating an invoice payment link URL and basically giving a Lightning Web Component a button to redirect to that URL to collect payment from my customer example here. So here you can see I have my Lightning Web Component loaded. I have an invoice ID. I just made up some data there and an amount due. And then I have this pay invoice button. So essentially what's happening here is in the back end, when I click the pay invoice, I'm making several call outs back into the Stripe API using the Lightning Web Components JavaScript. So to pull up that code here, when we open this up, you'll see the Stripe invoice here. You'll see the invoice ID, the amount due. Basically what I'm doing is calling this invoice URL. Inside the JavaScript, you'll see we're doing some very basic things, but we're using the make get call out from the Stripe API handler to actually call into the Stripe API. And we do this several times in this JavaScript code just to kind of give examples of kind of what's possible and how flexible this can be. But here you can see we're just setting some high-level variables to be used, the customer email address, the amount that I want to charge, and what currency I want to make the payment in. The first call I do is get the customer, so we go to look up this email address. If it exists, great, we return the customer ID. If it doesn't exist, we actually go ahead and create a customer. Again, we're passing in the three pieces that are needed by the make it call out, which is the URL encoded variables, if there are any, the actual URL of the Stripe API we want to talk to, and the method that's going to be used there. If we have to, we create the customer again. This is where we're setting a URL encode. All we're doing here is creating an email, so we're just creating a customer with a very simple email address and not actually collecting any additional information. But here again, you can see we're making the call to the make it call out. Again, this is a promise, so we have to do an await, and then it returns a JSON body, a string, so we do have to parse that, and then we just set the customer ID again. For invoices, we have to create a line item, associate it to the customer, and then we create an invoice, and that actually collects all the different line items that are associated with the customer and lumps them into an invoice, and then we finalize the invoice. When we finalize the invoice, basically we're saying we want to pay it, or we're setting it up to be paid, so when we make this call, we can actually get back the hosted invoice URL, and that's the actual URL we can go to pay an invoice. So let's go ahead and see this in action. So here we have our page loaded. Once I click pay invoice, it's actually doing all those calls in the back end. But then you can see it just simply redirects me back into the Stripe invoice page. And here I have options on how do I want to make a payment. So again, a very simplistic way to add payments to any Stripe Lightning Web Component, or to expand or accept payments from customers or integrate them in with invoicing, but do it in a very simplistic manner. But here you can see this page is loaded. Thank you.